Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to today's lecture. Can everyone hear me okay? One of the things that Life Extension asked me just to mention to you guys is this evaluation form. It's on your seat at the end of the lecture. If you could just take a few minutes, fill that out. Okay, thank you for joining me on such a beautiful sunny afternoon here in Fort Lauderdale. I woke up this morning and it was like a little bit of gray, overcast, wet. I was like, great, this is awesome. People will come in. But when it's beautiful outside, you want to stay outside. So thank you for coming in. So today's presentation is going to be about seasonal allergies and how you can take control of it using natural remedies. First, we'll start with a little bit about me. My name is Dr. Jason Dubois. I have been and still am a practicing pharmacist. I've been practicing it for well over 20 years now. I am also the founder and formulator of a brand called Hybrid Remedies, which I'll be talking to you guys a little bit about that as well. Before I started Hybrid Remedies, I worked for a very well-known, world-renowned healthcare clinic called Mayo Clinic. Some of you might be familiar with it. There are 3 Mayos in the world. There's one in Scottsdale, Arizona, one in Rochester, Minnesota, and then the one that I worked out of is in Jacksonville, Florida. What I did for Mayo for 15 plus years is I worked with the solid organ transplant team. I was the pharmacist, the doctor, behind the scenes that was designing all the immunosuppression protocols. So when you or a loved one gets a new organ, let's say it's a liver or a kidney, you have to suppress the immune system to prevent it from rejecting. That takes a series of drugs. It's a lifelong process, and everyone's a little bit unique. No one is exactly the same. During my tenure at Mayo, I was fortunate enough to help thousands of patients get what we used to call a new lease on life. I really enjoyed that career. Part of the irony of the story is that if you and I had met back then when I was working at Mayo, you would have gotten a very different viewpoint from me when it comes to natural remedies. I didn't use natural remedies. I didn't recommend them to my patients. A lot of times you probably could have described me as like the Darth Vader of natural, right? And it really wasn't until I started talking to my patients in the clinic, a lot of them wanted to use natural remedies after their transplant. And as a pharmacist, that was my role, was to help guide them in choosing safe remedies. That really is where my journey began, and I started researching natural remedies. And through that journey, I became very convicted, very passionate. Ultimately, I left Mayo to start Hybrid Remedies. And since that time, we've been in business for 10 years. And I love what I do. So my company started in 2012. It's in Jacksonville, Florida. If you're ever up that way, please come by, say hello. We'd love to meet you. And my forte is in immune remedies, immune products. So that's what we specialize in. So today's lecture, I want to cover some topics with you guys today. First, we're going to do some basic stuff. We're going to define essentially what seasonal allergies are. A lot of us know it near and dear to our hearts, right? If you're here for today's lecture, it's probably you or someone you love suffers with it. We'll cover the classic symptoms associated with allergies. I'll talk a little bit about the different phases of an allergic response. So you have early and late phase. What are the differences? Why do they matter? And then I'll identify what are the most common allergens in the U.S. today. Some of these you may know. Some of them might be new to you. And then the meat of the lecture today is the natural ingredients. I'm going to give you my top natural ingredients that really are super effective for seasonal allergies. Some of these you will know, but I bet you there's going to be 2 or 3 that you've never heard of. So I'm excited about that. And then as a bonus, I'm going to give you guys my top 3 immune secrets. All right, my 15 years of Mayo, culminating in organ transplant and immunology, there are certain immune secrets that I use that I'm going to share with you today when I'm creating award-winning formulas. So I'm going to share those with you today. In fact, we're going to start off with those secrets. So again, secret number one, when it comes to the immune system, specifically speaking of seasonal allergies. Seasonal allergies is not a histamine issue, or not just a histamine issue. Yes, histamine is a component, is definitely a factor, but it's not as big a factor as you might think. Really, seasonal allergies are more about your immune system. When you're having a seasonal allergy attack or an allergy attack, the heart of it, the core of it, is your immune response. Your immune system is really taking something that's rather harmless, tree pollen, for example, and turning it into something more serious. That's secret number one. Secret number two, and this took me a while to figure this out. If you want to achieve very effective immune support, it cannot be done with one ingredient. You have to layer it for optimal effect. The way you would do it with one item is you would do it with a drug. A drug is a very specific targeted effect within the body. It's designed that way in a lab to do just that one very thing in your body. Herbs don't necessarily work that way. So when you layer them, the key to immune support is using herbs that really kind of complement each other, but also work in different pathways. This will become a little bit more evident as we talk about the ingredient choices. And then there are three core principles that I always utilize whenever I'm going to help a patient or I'm going to create a new remedy. So the first one you always have to understand is not all herbs are equally effective. They're just not. Some herbs are just way better than others, depending on what the desired outcome is. Some of the 6 ingredients I'm going to be sharing with you today, to me, are extremely effective. It doesn't mean if it's not listed up here, it doesn't work. It's just my opinion on what I think is very, very effective. Number 2, herbs like to play together. They like to work together. Okay? So herbs on their own, not super effective. When you put herbs together that help each other, much more effective. I'll give you some examples of that later on. And then number 3 is the immune system is complex. One of the biggest challenges that me and my team faced when we were developing organ transplant programs is that the immune system has a lot of moving parts to it. When you want to suppress someone's immune system, like let's say you're going to give them a new liver, you cannot use just one drug. We know historically that just does not work. The immune system has too many biofeedback mechanisms to it. So you have to use multiple drugs. You have to target different pathways of the immune system. And you have to do it all at the same time. The same principles are true if you want to support the immune system. If you want to make it stronger, you have to use multiple herbs, target multiple pathways, do it all at the same time. Okay, allergic rhinitis. So, allergic rhinitis, fancy term for seasonal allergies, right? So, allergic rhinitis is inflammation of the nasal mucosa, and it's the result of excessive IgE release within the body. When you have that, you get all the classic symptoms associated with seasonal allergies. So IgE is one of the main immune mediators. It's not the only one, but it's one of the main ones. So you'll get things like itchy, nasal itching, sneezing, runny nose, nasal congestion. And here's an example of kind of what those symptoms are. Some people will get some of it. Some people will get all of them. Another classic one is the postnasal drip. It often results in a cough. So there are 2 phases in an allergic reaction, or for seasonal allergy. There's the early phase, so that your first initial exposure to, let's say, tree pollen, I'll just pick that one, your body will start mounting a chemical release of different inflammatory mediators. Histamine is one, but there are many others. So again, going back to that principle, it's not just about histamine. So we have leukotrienes play a critical role in inflammation, as well as prostaglandins, kinins, and neuropeptides. So that happens within the first few minutes. And then you get a late phase. And the late phase can be anywhere between 4 and 5 hours later. And it's basically a mounting immune response that continues from that initial onset. And usually that's mediated by leukotrienes. The leukotrienes are involved more so in the late phase inflammatory response. So leukotrienes are kind of like chemical hormones or chemical messengers that are natural to us. And they will recruit other immune cells, such as eosinophils, basophils, even sometimes some T cells. Now, while we're so focused on histamine, a little fun fact is that leukotrienes are actually 5,000 times more inflammatory than histamine. So it is a major factor in both asthma as well as allergies. And leukotrienes, once they get to a certain level, they can cause very similar side effects or similar reactions that histamine does. You have increased vascular permeability, tissue edema, airway mucus secretions increase, and you get an accumulation of additional inflammatory cells. So how big is this problem? Pretty big, right? All told, about 60 million Americans suffer from either asthma or allergies. They are intimately linked. Usually if you have one, you have the other. Not always, but a lot of times they're linked. From a prevalence standpoint, it's the 5th leading chronic disease in the U.S. Of all the diseases that we can struggle with in the U.S., allergies makes the top 5. And for children, it's even higher. It's number 3. When it comes to the type of allergens, there are a lot of different allergens out there. A majority of Americans suffer from either indoor or outdoor allergens, about 75%, which makes up about 40 million Americans. And then there's other lesser allergens, such as skin allergies, food and drug, latex, insect allergies, and eye. So, most common. How many of you, when it comes to allergens, think that, just by a show of hands, how many of you think that pet dander is the number 1 allergen in the U.S.? Just anybody think pet dander is an issue? 2, 3, okay. How many people think it is tree pollen, grasses? Okay. All right. How many people think it's something totally different? Good sampling. All right, so they're kind of tied in number 1. So it's if you said pet dander, you're right. If you said grasses and trees, you're also equally right. They tie the top 2 spots. Let's talk about our furry friends, cats and dogs. They do make up the majority of allergens in the U.S. Cats outnumber dogs when it comes to pets per household, and cats also produce the most number of cases of seasonal allergies. Okay, so what's interesting is I help a lot of patients with these illnesses, and often in my discussions I find out like they're struggling with seasonal allergies, and they come to me and I talk to them, find out if they have a pet or dog, and they say, yeah, whenever we go on vacation, my allergies always get better. And then as soon as I come back home, they come back again. And they think it's like where they went to, that the pollen was less or their allergies went away, but it's actually phyto that's really causing the problem. So if you have a cat or a dog, that could be a reason. Pollen is number two. For Florida, we're pretty high up there on pollen. I've got some slides on that. Most of the pollen for us is going to be grasses and tree pollen. It's not flower pollen. Flower pollen does not produce it in copious amounts like trees do. And we know when it comes, right? We get up in the morning and our white or yellow, our white car now is yellow. It's all covered all over our car. Fragrances is number three. There are certain fragrances that I can't tolerate. I just have a sneezing attack when I encounter them. Yankee Candle is a store you'll never see me in, right? Because it almost kills me. Beautiful store, but just some fragrances I can't tolerate. Dust mites is another big one. It's kind of a sleeper one, literally and figuratively. Right? Dust mites are ubiquitous. They're everywhere. They're almost impossible to kill. You can mitigate them a little bit, but dust mites can be a serious allergen. It's actually not the dust mite itself. It's the it's the excrement. It's what they get rid of that you're allergic to. And then mold. Where do you think Florida ranks when it comes to mold? You think we're in the top 10, top 5? Okay, we're number 1. All right, so that's awesome. There are a lot of different molds. The most two common ones are the one on the screen, Alternaria. That's the one that you'll see like in your shower, a little blackish bumps growing along your shower wall or along the basin, anywhere there's like a water leak or it's very, very damp all the time. That's Alternaria. That can cause allergies. And then there's Oreobasidium, and that tends to be found like in older homes and usually in and around or behind the wallpaper of a home. And then a lot of times you don't even notice it until you start renovating your house. And that also can release a lot of toxins that can cause allergies. And there's other mold that's even more serious than that. There's like a mold called Aspergillus. A lot of times it likes to hang out in like our HVAC systems. And that's why we want to keep cleaning those systems, because you don't want that in your air conditioning system. And then there's food, drugs, and latex. This kind of comprises a homogeneous category of people that have allergies. It could be peanuts, certain drugs. People have certain latex allergies. A lot of times, I see this a little bit more because I occasionally work in a hospital. We see people listing these as significant allergies. Every year, the Asthma and Allergy Foundation of America puts together this cool little list of the top 100 most challenging cities, and the top 10 are shown there, and then they also kind of list the least challenging as the bottom 100. And you can see just geographically, the West Coast is a much better place to live if you have allergies, whereas the Northeast and the Southwest, they're falling into the top 10 worst places you can live. I'm just curious, where do you think Florida falls? Do you think we made the top 100 lists at all? Yeah. Okay. Well, I did this lecture in 2019, and I'll do a side-by-side comparison for you. So 2019, we made the list 5 times for Florida. So Miami was ranked 37th out of 100. Jacksonville, my hometown, was up there too, 48. Cape Coral, Orlando, and Tampa. So that was 3-4 years ago. You think we're doing better? No, we're not doing better. So not only did we add more cities, but the cities that we had placed moved up in rank. So Miami went from 37th to 18th. Jacksonville went, from 48th to 22nd. We just picked up 3 more cities just for fun: Lakeland, DeLand, and or Daytona and Sarasota. And so you can see this is a growing issue. Um, and that could be maybe more people coming to Florida. That could be one of the possibilities. Now, there are things you can do lifestyle-wise to help with it, but I find a lot of these lifestyle treatments difficult to put into practice, right? So they talk about avoidance, just avoid certain allergens, right? So I guess that means like if your wife and her favorite cat are living in the same home with you, you just like send them off. You just kick them out of the house, right? So it's hard, if you have a pet allergy, it's hard to avoid that. Uh, Certainly there are, if you have pollen allergies, there are certain times of the year that you just know like it's going to be a pretty bad day. Certainly if it's dry, sunny, windy, that's really going to be stirring up the pollen. Wearing a mask can help. Believe it or not, if you're like mowing a lawn, as uncomfortable as it might be, if you wear a mask when you're mowing the yard, it will mitigate or lessen the pollen that you're breathing in. Staying indoors, that's hard to do. No one wants to stay indoors forever. Showering after being outdoors, that would be if you're very sensitive to pollen. Pollen is a very sticky substance. It will stick to your clothes, your shoes, your dog. It's going to stick to your hair. So washing that off really helps. And HEPA filters do work. So if you suffer from indoor allergens, putting HEPA filter machines in the house will decrease that particle amount. And then dust mites, that's just really tough to tackle, but covering the mattress and pillows will help. Washing your linens in 130-degree temperature, very hot water or higher. And try to maintain the humidity level less than 50%. Easy to do in Florida. All right, so let's talk about what's wrong with the drugs. As a pharmacist that comes from the drug world, there is a problem with the over-the-counter drugs. And simply stated, they all do the same thing. They all do the same thing. They just focus on histamine. When I was going through pharmacy school and beyond, that's kind of what, at least I was trained, is that it's a histamine problem. And so we have drugs that specifically block the histamine receptor in your body. So there's two histamine receptors in your body. There's H1 and H2. H1 receptor, that's what's closely related to your allergies. So drugs like Benadryl, Zizal, Claritin, Zyrtec, Allegra, they're all chemically different, but they all do the same thing. And that's where I kind of take issue with it because, again, what I'm about to share with you is it's not a histamine issue. And we know this to be true because, like, a lot of us have been on these drugs, or maybe some of us have been on this drug, and we find it like waxes and wanes in efficacy. You ever like find that some people start out on Claritin, and after a few months, it's like, gosh, it's not really working anymore, and they got to go to Allegra or something else. Again, there's more to it than histamine. So, what are some of the natural remedies that have been shown to be used for seasonal allergies? And this is just a short list. This is really not inclusive. I mean, this is just 10 minutes of researching on the internet. And there's so many. I mean, I could have put so many more up here. And when you start researching it, and trying to get an answer, it's like literally trying to stand under a waterfall and get a cup of water. It's just so many information. So some of these have good data, some of it not as good data in my opinion. But the ingredients that I found when I was doing my research that had the most impressive results were these 6. So today I'm going to spend most of my time talking about these 6 ingredients and what they're actually doing in the body to help when it comes to seasonal allergies. So butterbur, Panax ginseng andrographis, quercetin, rosmarinic acid, and apigenin. How many people know all 6? You don't count. Okay. we've got some students here today. I like that. Okay, quercetin. Quercetin is a popular ingredient. It's been around for a long time. It is classified as a bioflavonoid. The way it works is it works on two phases. One is it stabilizes the mast cell from releasing histamine. So mast cells contain histamine. It basically stabilizes the mast cell in such a way that it won't release as much histamine. And then when you do that, you can actually reduce overall inflammation. The problem with quercetin is the absorption is terrible. Only like if you take like plain quercetin, like quercetin anhydrous, the cheap stuff, only about 5% of that actually makes it into your bloodstream. So if it's 1,000 milligram dose, 5% of that was 50 milligrams, only gets into your body, and that's where it can potentially do some help. When it's paired with different salts or different sugar varieties, you can increase the absorption. So the one that I like to use is called quercetin dihydrate. It's in our formulas. I've seen it on the shelf as well here. The absorption goes up to about 80% when you use that. There are many other versions of quercetin. Like a lot of these companies are now coming out with higher absorption quercetin. Like another one's called isoquercetin. That kicks up the bioavailability to about 90%. Some of them will link it to a phytosol or an enzyme, and that also helps with absorption. So the take-home point here is quercetin works. You just have to make sure you're getting a good quality one that actually gets into the body. Rosmarinic acid. This is often found. This is an extract from the rosemary plant. You can also get it from basil or thyme. What I like about this ingredient is that it does help with histamine. It also has benefits on T helper cells. T helper cells are involved in our allergic pathway. I've got another slide that I'll go over on that. But again, we're like kind of touching on the immune response, which is the right direction we want to go in. There have been some clinical trials on it. They've shown that rosmarinic acid has been able to reduce swollen, itchy, and watery eyes. So it's a good ingredient for symptoms. Now, one of my favorite is apigenin. And when I talk about apigenin, I get puzzled looks on people's faces. They've never heard of that. And if you were to Google apigenin, you're going to see a lot of data as it relates to its anti-cancer benefits. And the data is actually pretty good. I've taken some time to research it. But what I like about apigenin is, again, its ability to work on the immune system, on the T helper cells. Now, T helper cells are involved in the immune response for both asthma as well as allergies. And it's also involved in fighting infection. When you have infection or allergies, you get an imbalance of Th1 to Th2. The main thing you just got to remember is you want to put that back into balance. When it's out of balance, it's creating additional inflammation that you don't want. So apigenin basically puts that back into balance. What's really cool also about apigenin, if you've ever seen it in its purest form, is it's like a bright yellow. It's like this yellow crystalline structure. The product that we use that has our apigenin in it, when you look at the capsule, it's bright yellow. A lot of people think we've colored it. It's just a naturally occurring yellow. Now, Panax ginseng. This is a sleeper. Like, how many of you would have thought about Panax ginseng for allergies, right? When you think about Panax ginseng, what comes to mind? Probably energy, mind, men's performance. What's cool about the ginseng plant, specifically the root, there are 30 properties referred to as ginsenosides. What's really neat is each one of those ginsenosides on their own does something completely different. Some of it will help with blood pressure. Some of it helps with memory and focus. Some of it's like more energy driven. There are ginsenosides in there that when you isolate them, you can actually help with seasonal allergies. So RH1 inhibits histamine release. Again, it's found within the root of the plant. RH2 lowers IgE production. And then compound K also can help with IgE production. RE is another ingredient that's only found in the berry of the ginseng plant, and there's some data showing that it can also help with histamine. So again, when you're formulating, when you're trying to control seasonal allergies, just taking Panax ginseng alone is probably not going to help you. But when we begin to layer these things, it's when you start to get a cumulative synergistic effect. Now, my all-time favorite. If you ask me to pick one herb, this would be it. The herb that actually convicted me the most to leave Mayo and start this company is Andrographis. This is an amazing, amazing herb. We could spend a whole hour just talking about this one herb. As it relates to the formulas here, its benefits are mainly its anti-inflammatory benefits on the upper respiratory tract, and it has a mild astringent type property. What's cool about that is it will help with the runny nose, post-nasal drip without it being overly dry. There's also some very good data for colds and flu, some of the best data I've ever seen, as well as Crohn's and IBS. The key constituent is andrographylide. That's what all the research is based on. Andrographylide you get mainly from the leaf of the plant, and that's where the activity is. And as you can see, Andrographis for allergies works on multiple levels. So it helps with eosinophil reaction, decreases inflammatory mediators like interleukin 4, 5, and 13, helps with IgE production, and again, the astringent properties. So you get, what I like about Andrographis is you get almost immediate results from using it. Now, one of the ingredients that I worked really hard to acquire is this ingredient called butterbur. And butterbur you're probably most familiar with when it comes to its migraine protection or migraine benefits. But butterbur has so many more benefits. There's actually a very unique butterbur found in Switzerland that I was able to license that has some amazing clinical trials for controlling or helping with allergies. I'm going to share some of those with you today. The active component is both pedicin and isopedicin. This is found in the leaf as well as the root of the plant. And then one of the caveats to using this is it has to be free of what we call PA-free, which is this pyrrolizidine alkaloid. That particular alkaloid is harmful to the liver. So when you're using butterbur, my recommendation is always make sure it's PA-free, and it should say that on the label. Just an interesting fun fact, National Geographic actually voted butterbur as the best all-around allergy stopper in 2018. Once a year, National Geographic comes out with this really cool magazine, all on natural remedies. They usually release it in April or May, and it's really well done. The butterbur works by stabilizing the mast cells. Again, mast cells are involved in asthma and allergies. It works by, again, limiting leukotriene release and formation. The cool thing about butterbur is it works all day. It doesn't work super fast, so it's something you have to take continuously, but the longer you use it, the more effective it becomes. So what were the clinical trials? I'm going to paraphrase some of these for you, but these are the clinical trials that, when I was reviewing this ingredient, thoroughly impressed me. So, pardon me. The first clinical trial was butterbur versus placebo. and this was in the treatment of people with seasonal allergies, a well-designed trial, randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled, fairly decent-sized study, 180 patients. And the patients were randomized to one of several arms, butterbur in high dose, butterbur in low dose, and then placebo. So they were given one of these three arms. What they received isn't really relevant, like the amount of butterbur they got, because the effects were the same in the high dose and the low dose of butterbur. But the results in all three scenarios were that the butterbur was more effective than placebo. And that's just like that's where your starting point is, right? That makes common sense. We would hope it'd be better than placebo. But then this company did something very unique. I rarely see this. They did a head-to-head clinical trial against one of the biggest drug names in the U.S. So they did this clinical trial, butterbur versus cetirizine, otherwise known as Zyrtec. Again, well-designed trial, randomized, double-blind, and 125 people enrolled, half in butterbur, half to cetirizine. And you can see the dosing that they used there. The results were basically, when it came to symptom scores, they used this calibrated survey called SF36. The symptom scores were the same in both groups. But what was interesting is that the cetirizine group, the Zyrtec group, had more side effects, reporting drowsiness and fatigue, which I find fascinating because Zyrtec is known to be not have those side effects. That's one of the advantages they tout. So the conclusion from the study was that butterbur was as effective as the drug, but with less side effects. The last one I'll share with you is butterbur versus fexofenadine, otherwise known as Allegra. Again, well-designed trial, placebo-controlled, measuring butterbur and fexofenadine for people with perennial allergic rhinitis, year-round seasonal allergies. Smaller trial, and it was a crossover trial. So you started out on butterbur and then flipped over to placebo, and then, or you started in fexofenadine and then crossed over to placebo. And it was over, I think, a 1 or 2 week period. The main outcome they were measuring was peak nasal inspiratory flow. The results were that both butterbur and fexofenadine were better than placebo, and that butterbur was also equally effective to fexofenadine or Allegra. So hopefully I shared with you guys some ideas about seasonal allergies that you hadn't thought of before. The take home, I guess, is a few things. One is, I think we've learned that seasonal allergies is really not histamine. It's more immune mediated. And I'm a big proponent of, again, using different ingredients in synergy to kind of layer them. So I guess when you're looking for a product or a formula, don't just focus on histamine. I see a lot of companies do that. I see a lot of companies use too many ingredients just for histamine. Look for a formula that can provide both. All right. So thank you so much for attending my presentation today. One thing you could do for me, that would be an honor to me, is if you guys are on Instagram or TikTok. I've started being on those channels, giving out information, videos, trying to build my following. Would love it if you guys could follow me at Hybrid Remedies. We're also going to be doing a raffle, but before that, we're going to be doing some Q&A. So if any of you guys have any questions about anything I've covered, I'd love to answer it for you. Did you have a question? Uh, did I miss someone on a question? It was okay. It's different. All right. Questions. You had a question, I think, with regard to. Okay. So his question was, what was the last straw that made me leave the dark world, right, and come to the light? I think that's fair enough. So that process took a long time. It wasn't overnight. I was probably the most skeptical person you'll ever meet when it comes to natural remedies. So I usually look at the evidence and the data. I don't. At least I was looking very hard at the evidence and data, and during that time, I probably spent 5 years researching natural remedies. Researched probably about 200 herbs specific for the immune system because I was trying to figure out if I could help my patients naturally. And it just took a long, slowly but surely, the more I researched, the more interested I became. Um, Going back to one of the slides I mentioned earlier, the herb that really took me by surprise, that really convicted me, was andrographis. And I've been studying that herb since 2004. Some really impressive data on that. Have I tried andrographis? Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that herb. I love that herb. We use it in our sinus formula. Yes, sir, in the back. So I don't think the mic is working for him, but you're saying what form? So yeah. So andrographis comes in several different forms, like tablets, capsules, uh, elixirs, tinctures, and also as a tea. Like you can steep the leaves in a tea. But if you've ever had or tasted andrographis, it's ridiculously bitter. It's it's called the king of bitters. It's insanely bitter. So if you're up for the challenge, you could take the liquid. I'm not, so I'll do the capsules, and that's how I like to formulate it over here.
Can you say something about bee pollen and allergies? Taking bee pollen to avoid allergies?
Okay. So his question was like bee pollen. What are my thoughts? Does it work? Um, so this was, I struggle with this one because I want to come at it from a data standpoint. And when the data is not there, it doesn't mean it doesn't work. Okay. So if you guys are big bee pollen fans, don't hate me. Okay. um, so bee pollen, I find works early on, like as a youth, as a child, data wise. Um, less likely to work as we get older, just because our immune system is like more established. But that's more opinion than fact. So I know there are some people that just swear by bee pollen.
I took bee pollen as a kid, and I do believe it.
Okay.
You see more of a relevance to it.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Okay. That's awesome. So so he's used bee pollen, works very well. So
So if you wanted to take the herbs themselves, rosemary, thyme, basil, celery leaves, how much would you have to take to be of
Um, so each one of those herbs is going to have an ideal dosage range. And I think in some of the slides I put them in there. Some of the slides, it's not totally clear from the clinical trials what the ideal dose is. So, like for example, like butterbur, we have a lot of clinical data on that. We know the ideal dosing for that is anywhere from 8 to 15 milligrams a day of butterbur. I can't remember rosmarinic acid, but rosmarinic acid I think is like 200 milligrams. Oh, the actual herb. Oh my gosh. So that becomes even trickier because one of the one of the nice things about using standardized ingredients is I can dial in very clearly what's in that powder. So whenever I'm formulating and encapsulating, I know exactly what's in that. One of the biggest herbs that's the biggest challenge is panax ginseng. If you want to use that herb, you have to let it grow for 5 years minimum. And there's different varieties of panax ginseng. And then once you harvest it, again, there's 30 properties in that herb. If you use the whole herb, which like that used to be the big thing is whole herbs, you will get a lot of unwanted properties from that root. So there's no way that I know of that you could use the rosemary plant and know that you're getting X amount of rosmarinic acid. So I don't know how to do that.
First thing covered on herb. The other herbs, can you grow them in your house with the LED grow lights and all that stuff, or you can't grow them outside because we have
So you can grow rosemary, thyme. Andrographis is actually very easy to grow. It's like grows like a weed. It's so easy. And it originated in India, and then Thailand, Asia. They use that stuff. Some of the best clinical trials done on andrographis were in the Netherlands. And now we here in the States, we're just finally catching up on that. But you can grow andrographis. Panax ginseng, no, I don't think you want to get into that. Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Well, part of today's lecture is educational in that regard, and I'm limited to what I can say about products until after the lecture is over. So now we're at the end. Okay, so my company, we make 3 products. We put a lot of R&D, about 3 to 5 years before we launch a product. The one that I'm kind of referring to today is called Hybrid AR, nasal and sinus support. My good friend Ronnie over there can show you what the product looks like. It's bright yellow. I think we're going to be raffling off one of them. That's the allergy remedy. I love that. You know, like I often joke because I have 3 products. I also have 3 kids. And my joke is like, you're not supposed to have one favorite kid. And I don't. It like changes based on each day. But I love Hybrid AR just because of the way it's helped so many people with seasonal allergies. It works really fast, and we're the only natural remedy that, just like any of the drugs, it's a 1 capsule a day dosing. So I'm not supposed to love one product that much, but I do love that one. The other one we have is called Hybrid CR. It's the first product I ever developed. It's designed for like, I have to be careful how I word this, but winter immune challenges. They won't let me say the C or F word here. So it's for those types of winter immune challenges. I would love to talk to you more about that particular remedy. And it's also going to be used for immune support year round. The third remedy is our elderberry-based remedy. It's called Hybrid EB. Great year-round immune support product. So if you're looking to stay immune strong, Hybrid EB is phenomenal on its own. So 3 products. I'm working on a new one for pain. We're still in the R&D phase on that. Trying to look at like some new exciting ingredients. The stuff that they have over in Europe is really cool. So I'm trying to bring that over here. So that's coming. Yes, ma'am. So her question was the herbs that I purchased, do I acquire them in this country or where do I get them? So the U.S. is not great about growing quality herbs. So for example, one of our formulas uses echinacea. We get the echinacea from, there's a farm in Canada, and then there's like a sister farm in Washington. So I'll get it from there. Outside of that, like for example, the butterbur we get from Switzerland. Some stuff we get from Spain, Germany. I try to get good suppliers that grow quality herbs. And unfortunately, the U.S. is not great about that. We're just not into that industry. The minerals, though, like zinc and selenium, we have some great companies here in the U.S. that we can source that from. This is a very good question. I think you had a question, no? Okay. All right, I think we're going to go to the raffle. You get it. Oh, he needs a ticket. We got one more ticket, I think. Make sure everybody's got a ticket. So this is for like the all expense paid trip to Europe. Yeah. Okay. So you want? Okay. So what's the first? I think we're raffling off like 4 things. What do we got? Okay. All right. Bring that over here. All right. First thing I'm raffling off is the Hybrid Remedies T-shirt. It's an awesome T-shirt, let me tell you, because it's super soft. It's got a little stretch to it. All right, hold that. All right, who's got last 4 digits? 3282. 3282. There it is. All right, cool. All right. T-shirt number 2. All right. 3296. Thank you. All right. All right. My first product I ever developed, Hybrid CR, Rapid Immune Defense. People refer to it as like that natural Z-Pack. I'm probably not supposed to say that. Okay. All right. 3275. 3275, that man right there. Awesome. All right. This is Hybrid CR 30 count. The big brother. Okay. Who has 3298? There we go. Awesome. Thank you. All right. All right. This is what all the rage is about. Hybrid CR, Hybrid AR. Sorry, my favorite. Although I'm not supposed to say that. It's my favorite. Okay. All right. Who's got 3300? That man right there. Okay. Awesome. All right. And then you got stuff too. All right. Here. I'll let you pick.
Okay. So we have the last 4 digits, 3289. 32. Here we go. And the other 4 digits are 3274. 3274. Congratulations. Thank you.
All right. Thank you guys for joining. I'm going to be over at the table here. If you guys have any additional questions, you want to talk about the products, happy to meet you. Thank you again so much.